You are Locked On Hawks Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Locked On Hawks Postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me is NBA and college basketball analyst DeShaun Tate. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And the Locked On Hawks Postcast is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So there was a monster 5-minute stretch where the Hawks were masterful at both ends. We'll discuss. And number 10 is playing like he's the number one. We'll download on that too. But first, let's talk takes on the Hawks 132-123 win over the Sixers tonight. And Tate, you said this game is why free throws are so important.
Because we keep talking about them over and over and over. And it just seems like the frustration was building up so much to a point. I kind of alluded to this, a couple of days ago, that kind of feels like, what, are they listening to the postcast? Because
Maybe so.
They found a way to kind of hit their stride, if not from nowhere else, then certainly from the charity stripe. And I think that it's definitely, been obviously very beneficial to them. But here again, another game where we see that, late into the game, we start talking about it being within single digits, a 2-possession game after, having the lead, for 21 or 22 points, and then get cut down to 6. If it wasn't for majority, not even just about the free throws, down the stretch at the end, but I think for the first 3 quarters, they were shooting 100% from the line, which I was just kind of like, wow, I had to keep on refreshing to make sure that was actually true. And then, of course, down the stretch, they definitely had missed a couple, but certainly finishing with 78%. But I think it was just impressive in general to see them be able to do that for such an extended period of time for the first 3 quarters, I think was good. And even though, I think they went 5 for 6, which I think was very important, very late down the stretch to kind of put Philadelphia away when Philadelphia start trying to come back and make its make its run.
Yeah, that was one of the areas where the Hawks were able to be successful really across the entirety of the game. But like you said, in the most important moments where the Sixers attempted a comeback, and it's one of the areas where we want to see them continue to dominate, because that can be important in tight games in the postseason. So to be more confident that they can get to the charity stripe, and then when they get there, they can actually convert. Or when a team is trying to use the fouls to slow the game down and come back, you actually convert. That's also a good look for them as well, because that's complementary, in my opinion, to another area where they do extremely well and have done extremely well for the better part of a month is their points in the paint. So when you look at how they outscore the 76ers 76-46, I feel like all those things go hand in hand, because that means that they are really, really attacking inside. And granted, tonight they almost shot 41% from the 3-point line, and that's great. But most of the time they're kind of middling in the 30s. So again, when I look at the free throws and I look at the points in the paint, and I think about those things being so critical to this team, it's encouraging and exciting, because it tells me that when they have another off night from the perimeter, which we know they will have, then we can still be confident that the Hawks can actually win in different ways. And again, if you want to get into the postseason and at least make some noise in the postseason, you have to be able to win more than one way, especially because we know this is not an especially good 3-point shooting team. But I think another thing that showed itself, and maybe DeShaun more than just in one way that I'm going to point out, it may have shown itself in a few other ways, and that's the fact that the backcourt was in good hands, even without Trae Young. We found out that Trae was a scratch tonight. Of course, he was a scratch because of the hip side kind of contusion that he got in the 3rd quarter of the game Saturday night. So understood about him, right? But then we find out Karis LeVert's not playing, and it's like, okay, how many more guys are going to go down for the Hawks tonight? Like, who's going to actually suit up in the starting lineup, if you will? And it was Keaton Wallace, who does a masterful job just managing himself between the Skyhawks and the Hawks. But yeah, I kind of was impressed with Dyson Daniels in particular, because having to take on the heavy load and then actually showing up and actually delivering, I was impressed because he was 1 assist shy of a double-double. So I think just for him to be able to show you how good of a ball handler and distributor he is, that was impressive to me. And yet within that, he was still able to get 25 points on just 10 of 14 shooting, and he was still able to get his trademark couple of steals. So I just like the way that he was able to at least bring some confidence to Quinn Snyder that, hey, if there is a stretch within these last 12 games where I need to give Trae Young a rest, or Trae's hip is bothering him again, or maybe, God forbid, but there's some other reason that Trae can't go, to me, to have Dyson Daniels show you that he can do it at both ends of the court and successfully to the point of almost a double-double, I was just really impressed by Dyson Daniels, and I felt like, wow, like the backcourt really is in good hands, even if they have to go without Trae.
Well, you had every reason to feel that way and to believe that, because he's kind of done that whenever Trae goes to the bench or something like that. Even in the moments when he is playing, obviously you see Dyson on the floor, and if Keaton Wallace isn't out there, then you'll see that. I mean, think about all the duties and responsibilities that he has, is to, obviously knock down those jump shots and taking it to the basket, and he converts very well on those a lot of times, especially for a guard who's not really known for its scoring, whether it's shooting or whether it's to get into the cup. Then you start, obviously he's got the defensive aspect to his game as well, and he's not like any prototypical natural born and bred point guard by any means, but he protects the basketball. He distributes it, he facilitates, he gets it to where it needs to go. It's not Trae Young flash and nutmegging people and throwing no-look dimes and all that, but it still gets the job done if you need a plug and play. And don't forget, this is just his first year in an Atlanta Hawks uniform, not even a full year that's been played. I think that's where, when you factor in all of those things, and not everybody's going to be the rah-rah guy. Not everybody's going to be the, getting guys in the huddle fired up kind of guy. He's leading with his play on both sides of the ball, which is great. I think two things that this team, really had to do and couldn't afford on tonight was to do obviously what they're supposed to do, impose their will and try to maintain their clean bill of health. And then the other thing is to play with pride and don't underestimate your opponent, because I've seen way too many times where we look at our phones and say, I would not have guessed that. Whoever took that on the money line tonight just must have just known something that we didn't know, because you had this team who was completely healthy, and you had this other team over here who looks like they were completely unhealthy, and the completely unhealthy team came away with a win because the completely healthy team underestimated the other one. So it's just good to see that the Hawks were able to put them away the way that they were supposed to.
Yeah. And even when the 76ers mounted a comeback, the Hawks were able to stave it off. And I like that as well, because that just shows, hey, it's the NBA. On any given night, any team can win. And I mean, we saw it. That's why we saw it even tonight around the association. That's why the Hawks are finding themselves in some pretty good company. Thank you, Charlotte, because there are other teams that were able to do what the Hawks, they were able to do what the 76ers weren't able to do. And I kind of juxtapose that, what Charlotte did in beating the Miami Heat tonight. Miami Heat may have just underestimated the Charlotte Hornets. And that's why you walk away with that win like they were able to get. And in the meantime, but we're having a conversation about the Hawks actually taking care of business and taking the Sixers seriously for whomever took on the court. And just one more thing about the backcourt and the fact that we did get something positive that says, hey, it's in good hands when Trae's not available, is the play of Terrence Mann. Thought he had himself a night. And just wanted to kind of highlight that for him. He just continues to bring, continues to bring it every night. And
that's a good point.
It's getting better and better, because tonight he also had a nice two-way game, 19 points, 6 rebounds, 5 defensive rebounds, and 4 assists. And I don't want to spoil it for our other guard, who absolutely had a nice game himself. So if you want to hear about that guy who we're talking about that was so critical in this 5-minute stretch, then come back for our turning point. This episode of our Locked On Hawks Postcast is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal that day. The next day, rather. It's simple. When any player scores 50 or more in a game during the 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. Here are a few ways you can take advantage of this deal. A game day feast. After an epic 50-point performance, celebrate by ordering wings, pizza, or burgers from your favorite spot delivered straight to your door, or lunch on the go. Need a quick and easy lunch the next day with Dash Pass? You get your favorite meals with $0 in delivery fees and reduced service fees. Plus, now you save even more with this exclusive NBA offer. So sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. Again, when any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account and terms do apply, but visit DoorDash to learn more.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
So midway into the third quarter, the Hawks went from an 11-point lead to a 21-point lead. And maybe one of the most impressive things there is that the Hawks didn't score for almost 2 game minutes within that 5 game minute stretch. But here's what happened in that stretch to about that from the 6:02 mark to 1:31 that we felt was our turning point. It was 2 things. It was the Hawks defense and a couple of 3 keys by a guy that we hadn't seen in a month who really came back tonight and made his presence felt. But first, let's talk about that defense, because for the Hawks to go 2 game minutes, that is, and be scoreless, but then walk away from this 5-minute stretch with a 21-point lead was pretty impressive. And it was really about the way that they were aggressive on defense.
Well, it's about the impact of the guy that we talked about in the last segment, which was Dyson Daniels.
Yes.
The ability to be an on-ball defender. Obviously, Mo Gay had some good plays down in that stretch at one point in time as well. So I think that just when you're really focused and you're locked in, you're dialed in, I feel like the Atlanta Hawks kind of maybe they didn't really know this or feel this, but I feel like within their game, within their play during that stretch, that they were like, all right, you know what? This had been going on long enough. They've been kind of hanging around for every bit of, 8 points here with us leading, 10, 11 points here with us leading, but not really getting ahead by a more significant margin. And from that standpoint, that's where I think that, the Hawks were just kind of locked in from a defensive standpoint. You saw during that stretch a turnover or 2 from Philly, and they just really couldn't throw the ball in the basket at all. I think they went like 2 for 9 from the field or something like that. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Hawks are still running and on a stretch of where they scoring. You're going a 14-4 scoring run. At that point, you alluded to Vit Krejci being able to hit a couple threes, but even Terrence Mann even hit a couple big-time shots for them as well en route to a 19-point game. So I think that both sides of the ball for sure, but you can ask anybody, scoring back and forth with an opponent is only going to do so much. You're not going to be able to really extend the lead. It's just going to continue to kind of trade baskets, if you will. You got to be able to get some stops, and they were able to do that, hence why they went up by 21 points.
Yeah, and going back to the defensive side, because that's what really held them down until their offense could pick up. There was one point where, as you were starting that stretch, there was a defensive team rebound. How often do you hear that? But that says, hey, these guys felt that it was important for them to collapse in the paint and make sure that they were going to limit the 76ers second chance points by any means necessary. And then next, as you mentioned, Terrence Mann not only showed it from the offensive side, but the defensive side of the ball as well. And then you look at Clint Capella, who had nice little stretches during this game too. Not a lot of playing time, but when he was in there, he made his presence felt, gave the Hawks an opportunity with an offensive team rebound, but he was kind of really leading the charge there. And then also you kind of see where, as you mentioned, Vit Krejci enters the game, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, all right, we got ourselves a 3-pointer. Now we're back scoring. And once you get that scoring, now you're playing that two-way game, and you see that lead kind of start to stretch itself out, and you're getting points from all over the place, and you're getting yourself second chance point opportunities, because you look at a Georges Niang, who missed an easy 2-point shot, but the offensive rebound that they got was so important. And then he comes back and he rights the wrong by getting a defensive rebound, and then was able to get a 2-pointer off that. So I think it's that playing off of the defense that led to some really good offense for the Hawks tonight. I think that was where that turning point was for them to say, hey, we're confident that we put this game out of hand and that we're going to win it. But another guy who really was responsible for that, not just that run, but the way that the Hawks attacked this game, is a guy that you feel like his play is really a straight throwback. And that's what you'll be talking about.
This is what you'll be talking about.
So you absolutely love the play of Onyeka Okongwu. And I know we've been talking about him for a while, because he's really been showing up the last month to month and a half as a true starter for this Hawks team. But there was something about his play tonight that you saw, DeShaun, where you said, it's kind of giving throwback for me.
I did, and it wasn't even just tonight, but I've been just kind of watching from afar, from a distance, just watching how he's doing little things, some of his different mechanics, his release of the ball, and just his style of play, right? Kind of reminds me a little bit of Al Horford to a degree. Maybe not the most athletic guy in the world, certainly strong, a little bit undersized, probably for a 5 position.
True.
I know that was one of the big things that was about, in conversation as when he was here as an Atlanta Hawk. And he was just really dependable, right?
Yeah.
He's maybe not going to jump out the page on you, or do anything that's going to be ridiculous, not the most athletic guy in the world or anything like that, but he's going to be strong and he's going to do all the little things. He doesn't really exert like a ton of extra energy for no reason on anything. Everything just really kind of appears to be calculated. Then when you start looking at what he can do from the outside, you remember when Al Horford came in here, and I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. I'll mention it again, especially because it's a credit to the staff and so forth, or whomever has been putting this in place over the years. But when you look at Al Horford, I remember him coming in as an Atlanta Hawk, excuse me, and I have been watching him since high school, because we grew up right down the road from one another in terms of our school districts and so forth. Nobody would ever imagine this guy stepping out and shooting a 3-pointer. It's like, why would you do that? Coach calls a timeout. You come sit next to me. You're never getting back in the game. He started to kind of develop that within his game, beyond just, baseline jump shooter, kind of stretching out to 3, stretching out defenses, being a guy that most people wouldn't anticipate is going to be, is going to be confident enough to shoot it. We're starting to see that confidence kind of develop with Okongwu as he went 100% from 3 on tonight. And I feel like we even seen that during some stints when John Collins was here. He was stepping outside from time to time and shooting that 3 ball at the 4 position. So congrats to Onyeka Okongwu, because ever since he's been inserted into this lineup, he has just been absolutely killing it. And everything that you see with him, the thing I love about it is everything doesn't show up on the stat sheet with him. You can kind of see when they need somebody to do some of that dirty work and getting his hands dirty and things like that. So like kind of like a glue guy to a degree. He definitely fits that mold.
Yeah, because he doesn't mind whether he is inside wreaking havoc. He doesn't mind if he is sending help, especially on the perimeter. Onyeka Okongwu really is kind of a do-it-all guy. And I really like that analogy of comparing him to Al Horford, because in the same way that we slowly but surely saw Al Horford evolve his game, that's what we're seeing in Onyeka Okongwu. I mean, Onyeka Okongwu was perfect from 3 tonight.
Right. Whoever would have thought that.
Exactly. The big, while still playing his game, because he still had 15 points and 5 rebounds, and then learning as a big how to handle the ball. He had 3 assists tonight. So again, it's the evolution of his game that we're seeing that says, hey, he may not be your traditional big in the sense of like big body per se, but he is a new school NBA big that has the throwback of Al Horford. But Al Horford is also kind of that bridge of a new school type big, because, hey, he is the guy who the Celtics know every now and again, if we need a three, we can get it from him.
We can get it from him.
If we need a 17-foot jumper, we can get it from him, but we can also get him dominating inside the paint if he needs to. So yeah, love the analogy of Onyeka Okongwu, putting us in the mind of the great Al Horford. And there's a guy who is also playing lights out, number 10. He's playing like he's a number 1. We'll discuss. This episode of our Locked On Hawks Postcast is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the net. So you can pick your favorites. I mean, if you have your eye on a few underdogs, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. Staying in the action. Hey, with tournament games happening almost daily, there's always something exciting to bet on. And the FanDuel app is simple and easy to use, and you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That's FanDuel.com.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
So, DeShaun, this is another guy we have been talking about quite frequently, really not even just the last weeks or the last month. I want to really say this second half of this season, meaning the 2025 part of it, not so much second half as in just since the All-Star break. And that's Zaccharie Risacher. The way that he is attacking and approaching the game as a rookie, you absolutely have to love it. A 22.8 rebound, 2 assist night for Zaccharie Risacher was just, and I think if I can co-sign on what you said about Onyeka Okongwu and everything not showing up on the stat line or in the stat sheet for him, I don't think Zaccharie Risacher's box score really tells enough of the story about just how special he has been playing and looking every bit the number 1 he is.
Tenitra living in my head again, because that's exactly where I was going. Like we always talk about the players that can do all these fascinating things. Sometimes it's just as simple about going out there and getting the job done. Yep. And I like the fact that I've been able to see that out of Zaccharie Risacher, because he's playing loose, right? He looks like he's playing. When I went back and looked at some highlights from when he was playing on the international level, it's good to see that he's kind of brought some of that all over here to the States and into the NBA and obviously onto this team, because I think it was something that would help his transition a lot more. Now, granted, I do think because the NBA is a little bit more of international, or it's built for a more international style of players to be able to succeed in it as well. But it's also not the easiest thing to have all the pressure on him that he has as a number 1 pick and going out there and doing it and then doing it consistently. Yeah. Like I think you're seeing the confidence just build. Like, is he oozing with confidence? Probably not. But I like just the approach to the game that he has, because I don't feel like he just looks like he's going out there to try and get better every single day. And I'm always, of course, because I'm only like 150 pounds or something along those lines as a grown man myself, embarrassingly enough to admit to, but because he has this slim build, he's not afraid to get in there and mix it up. He's not afraid to go in there against the trees. He's not afraid to go in there and try and grab a loose rebound and then, get into a tie-up situation with a guy that's much bigger than he is. Then next thing you know, it's a jump ball type of situation. It's kind of like just, when you think about players that are just kind of like all over the place all the time and just flying around all the time and just mixing it up or finding their way to get their hands on, on loose balls or just whatever the case may be, creating second chance points and different things like that. You typically kind of think of an annoying little gnat, like almost like a guard, right? But this is somebody who has, the length to go along with it, the size in terms of the height to go along with that. Plays pretty good defense. Is he the best defender? No. And of course, there's a lot of things he's kind of got to fine tune within his game. But I love the idea that his approach doesn't appear as if he's trying to go out there and prove to everybody why he's the rookie of the year. He's just kind of going out there and playing his game. And it sounds cool and cute when everybody's saying, I'm just going to go out there and do whatever the guys and the coach needs me to do. But that's what it looks like he's actually doing, and showing that with your actions behind just, saying it with words, I think says something about Zaccharie Risacher and what we've seen lately.
Yeah, and I like the fact that in addition to his 22 points, he really, really helped the Hawks to kind of put some space between themselves and the Sixers in that first half with 17 points on 7 of 9 from the field, 6 rebounds. But you know what we really like? The 2 threes and the 2 dunks, because that says, like you said, he's unafraid to get in there, mix it up, and kind of do his thing and say, hey, you dare me? Then I'm going to actually do it. And I just love that, because it's like, got a little edge there, showing a little moxie.
He moves so well without the ball. It's incredible.
He does. He literally does. And I literally just was kind of watching one of his dunks, and that's exactly what you saw. You literally saw him come out of nowhere. He was moving around, right? Ball never in his hands, but he's watching the play, and then he sees a shot, seeing, I guess, just in case that shot is missed, and he was right there before the slam of it. Yeah,
and everybody else is just standing around looking at the ball.
Yep, everybody else. He literally, as I look at the replay, he literally went through 4 Sixers, 4 defenders.
He did.
Standing around, I don't know, kind of waiting for the plane back to Philly. I don't really know what they were doing, but all I know is he made a heads-up play and was looking for whatever opportunity he was going to get, and he absolutely went for it. But another guy who we talk about, and we didn't see him tonight, but we got to give him his props before we go, because he had an absolute monster week last week in a really nice stretch for the Hawks. Coming into this week, wrapping up that week with 3 games, 1 out of 4. Now we're talking about a 3-game winning streak, if you will, make that 4 games. And you kind of got to love what you're seeing out of the Hawks. But we said it last night, don't forget, it all still starts and stops with Trae Young. And of course, he was named the Eastern Conference Player of the Week today, because in the last 4 games, 24.5 points and 13 assists per game is what Trae was averaging. But more importantly, as we noted a couple nights ago, it's his chemistry and his trust in his teammates that's really kind of shining up, because you don't average 13 assists per game unless you think the person on the receiving end can actually convert a basket.
Well, that 3-1 record that he had within that 4-game stretch, by the way, 97% from the free throw line. And by the way, I think this is counting the last game. Am I correct about that? Against
because I think the last game was 95%.
Correct.
Yeah.
One free throw was the one that he missed, and you needed to miss that one on purpose to put them out of position of being able to extend the game. So I have full confidence that he would have made that free throw. But no, got to give Trae Young his credit, as we always do. I mean, Trae Young is a wizard with the basketball, obviously, from assist standpoint. Never going to really get his credit by a lot of the other people. For me, that doesn't matter nearly as much, but it's good to see that he got recognized that by his peers.
Yeah, and this is the kind of thing that when you look at the Hawks being able to do what they did in that stretch that got him the Eastern Conference Player of the Week, and even extending that a little bit tonight, that's the kind of thing that not only puts you in that 7th seed, in that 7th position, but it keeps you there, because we talked about this a couple nights ago, how Orlando is swooning. Miami, I don't know. They kind of fell off the wagon tonight against the Charlotte Hornets. And so when you kind of look at the things that he's been able to do and saying, hey, at the end of the day, we do what we're supposed to do, and that is win the ball games we're supposed to win. And you're looking at other teams like Miami that didn't do what they were supposed to do tonight in order to at least gain some ground. Now, again, the Bulls, okay, they're in the 10th spot, but they actually did smoke the Pacers, so they kind of did something to help their cause. But I like the fact that Trae Young is really orchestrating this team through a stretch that is far better, I think, than what the record of 31-34 indicates. I think you got to be really positive about what you've seen in the Hawks the last several games. And I think you're going to see more of that when the Hornets come to town, because I think that the Hawks know, ask Miami and ask the Hawks. Charlotte has always been that team that just is, they get under the Hawks. And so I don't think they're going to not take them seriously come Wednesday. Locked On Sports Atlanta is the #1 place to hang out after every game. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, check out Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We will see you next time.